everyone, it's Michelle. Today I have a card tutorial where I'm going to be showing you how to create a watercolor scene with two different kinds of media. So I'm starting out with these two stamp sets from the Alleyway Stamps. The first one is called Branching Out and the second is called Alphabet Soup. I've already pulled out the stamps that I'm going to be using from these sets and put them aside. So here you can see how I've assembled them, and I like to do this a lot with my stamps before I start a card, so it's almost like starting off with a sketch. So this is a general layout of how I want everything to go, and as you see there's going to be a little bit of layering with the bird on the branch because I want to make it look like it's sitting on there. So to start off I have to create a mask so that the stamps won't be overlapping on the final card. I want to make this a one layer card. So I pulled out some black ink and just a scrap piece of paper. This is just some typing paper that is very thin, so it's easy to cut out and stamp over. And I'm just going to stamp this branch onto this scrap piece of paper, and when I cut it out it's going to make a mask for my bird. And if you want, you can use masking paper for this, which is adhesive on one side, but I find it's really easy to just do this with normal paper, and if I have to I can tape it down. So you can see here I'm trimming the branch off really quickly. It's a really easy shape, and you can see how I kind of just ignored that little piece sticking off also. It doesn't really matter for the scene I'm creating, so I just went ahead and cut that off so it took a little less time for me. So I have a watercolor card base here, and this is cut to 4 1/4. Well, it folds to be 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, but it's actually 8 1/2 by 5 1/2, and it's already been scored down the middle. So I'm going to be taping this down the fold onto a palette. You can also do this on top of a craft sheet or a craft mat. But I'm just going to be using this palette later for some of the watercolor I'll be doing, so I decided to just go ahead and do that. And I'm just planning out where I'm going to be stamping. So I'm putting down this mask and I'm going to be stamping the bird on top of it so that the whole bird won't show, and it'll look like some of the bird is behind the branch. It'll be easier to see once I finish this, but I'm just taping that down with a little bit of painter's tape to keep that in place, and I went ahead and stamped the bird in a waterproof ink because I will be doing watercolor. So this is a Hero Arts dye ink. And after I finished, I went ahead and did the same with the branch, but the bird's feet did not stamp, and I didn't want to deal with more masking. So I just really easily drew that in with a marker, just like freehand, and I had the little stamp there just to look to see how the feet were supposed to go, just to make it a little easier. So you can see how it looks like the bird is on top of the branch now. So that's why I did all that masking. And now I am going to be working on my sentiment, which I'm going to do right under the branch. And I want it to say thank you. So I spelled that out using the alphabet stamps that I pulled out earlier. And before I stamp alphabet stamps, when they're just separate letters like this, I like to just stamp it off onto scrap paper just to make sure the spacing's all right, because sometimes the spaces around the letters can make it look awkward if they're too far apart or too close. But everything was actually okay for the stamp set, so I just went ahead and stamped that onto the card as well. So today I'm using some new markers. Well, they're new to me, and they're called Zig Clean Color Real Brush Markers. And they're basically like watercolor markers, and I really like them because they have a real brush instead of like a pen or something like that. So you can get really fine, and it does take a little getting used to because sometimes the brush is really delicate. But I've been experimenting with them and I have been really liking them, and they blend really well. So I'm pulling them out for this card today just to show you guys. And I'm just making this super easy. I just have a simple set of 12 colors, so I don't have too many different shades of the same color family or anything like that. So I'm just pulling out one brown color, and I'll be using that for the branch. But I'll show you later how you can really layer the color a lot, which I really like to get different shades of the same color. So right now I'm just starting with one layer of that brown, which I will spread out with water, and later I'll be going back with another layer. And I'm also going ahead and coloring in the bird. I'm going to make it like a nice little blue tropical looking bird. So I put in 2 shades of blue for the body, and then for the wings I put shades of green and yellow just to give it a little bit more of a bright color. So I'm just taking a fine-tipped paintbrush and blending those colors together. And you can see how easily those 2 shades of blue really blend together. You can also use a water brush for this, which I usually do, but I couldn't find it, so I just went ahead and used a regular paintbrush. And I'm just going to go ahead and blend these colors. And they're supposed to be able to blend really well without water as well, but I just like to use them as watercolor markers because that's kind of the look that I like to achieve. So you can see how easy it is for me to just blend that brown color to the top of the branch, and it already looks like the bottom is kind of in shadow. But I wanted to create even more of an effect, so I layered another layer of brown on the bottom, and now you can see how it really adds a lot more contrast. And I did the same thing on the bird. I added more of the dark blue color to the bottom of the body, and it just really adds a lot of depth. So you can see how if you keep layering these colors, you can get really dramatic effects with them. And usually when I put more coats, I just put a little less water to blend it really quickly because I don't want the pigment to spread too much. So after I finish that, I'm going to move on to the second kind of watercoloring I'll be doing, and this is going to be using distress inks. And I'm using distress inks for this part of the card because I'm going to be covering a larger area, so it's just easier for me to use these ink pads because you can smush down a bunch of ink at one time as I did on my palette. So I'm just using a flat brush now to kind of just brush plain water. This has no color in it, but I'm just getting my watercolor paper wet right now, and I want to just create kind of an area around my bird, and I kind of want it to look like a sunset, so I've pulled out like purples and reds along with the typical blues for like sky colors. So you can see how I put down the color and it just spreads instantly because of the water I put on the watercolor paper before I brought color in. And I'm just switching back between my two brushes. One of them I mostly use to put color on, and the other one I kind of use to make sure it gets up against the edges of my stamps, just to make sure there aren't too many of those like white spaces next to the image. And to make it spread more, I also take my brush when it doesn't have any color on it, just plain water, as you can see I'm doing here, and I kind of just spread the pigment out a little bit, just so that it creates more of a faded effect along the edges. And I just wiped up a bit of extra ink just because I want to make sure it doesn't get to the other side of the fold. And I just did that with a baby wipe. And I also went ahead and just wiped off my palette, which is really easy to clean, and I left that to dry. So after that's all done drying, I came back and slowly peeled off that painter's tape, and you can see how it creates that perfect line so that it doesn't get on the back of your card. And I'm just going to finish this off with some clear star stickers from Freckled Fawn, which are really nice because they kind of pick up the color underneath them, and it just gives a little bit of shininess and dimension. So here is the finished card. I'm really enjoying creating watercolor cards with these new markers, so check them out if you haven't heard of them. And you can definitely look up other tutorials. I know Jennifer McGuire has done some telling you more about these markers. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you like watercolor cards, there are a few more I have on screen here that you might want to check out. And make sure to subscribe to my channel and the Alleyway Stamps. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.